Remember Aunt Esther? The piercing gaze, the unforgiving voice, and the presence that could silence a room. But behind that persona was a woman who danced with fire, lost 3 husbands, and lived her final years in silence, far from the spotlight. Her name was LaWanda Page. Before Hollywood knew her, she was Alberta Pearl, a nobody who traveled through dozens of nightclubs, surviving on dangerous stunts and unshared pain. It wasn't until an old friend, Red Fox, reached out and pulled her out of the abyss that LaWanda had a chance to be known to the rest of America. But fame never erased loneliness. Behind the laughter were years of battling illness, of oblivion, and of a house that lay silent with no one knocking on the door. How could someone who was so fiery pass away so quietly? Let's step into the untold story of LaWanda Page, a chapter of her life filled with fire, loss, and a legacy that time has forgotten. If she was a part of your memories, please subscribe to join Final Legacy in preserving stories that should not be forgotten. Before she became the Aunt Esther that made America laugh, LaWanda Page was just a little girl named Alberta Pearl Richmond, born on October 19, 1920, in the American South where poverty stalked her like a shadow. The story of where she was born has never been confirmed with certainty, Mississippi or Alabama, no one knows for sure, and there are few people left to tell it. Her mother, Estella Richmond, left her ex-husband with her baby in her arms, taking the train north, carrying with her a vague hope that the city of Cleveland would be more tolerant of them. There, Estella remarried a man named Charles Murray and began using the stage name Estella Murray. But it was not the new marriage, but the street corners of Cleveland that defined Alberta. It was the skinny brown girl standing on the sidewalks of the black neighborhood, lining up with other children to dance every afternoon. No stage, no microphone, just the cement floor, music from a generator, and the expectant eyes of passers-by. Whether it was the Charleston, the Black Bottom, or the cakewalk, she performed every move with excellence. The audience rewarded her talent with coins, often bringing in 20 to 25 cents a day. An impressive income for a child at the time. LaWanda's popularity only increased when she began performing regularly at the Friendly Inn, a nearby community center. But everything changed when the family moved to St. Louis. The streets there became unfamiliar and the sidewalk performances stopped. LaWanda focused on her studies and enrolled in Banacre Elementary School. There, in a small classroom, she met a boy who was younger but extremely intelligent, mischievous, and especially good at telling stories. His name was John Elroy Sanford, later known to the world as Red Fox. They quickly became inseparable. 2 black kids in a strange city, acting out make-believe plays, making up lyrics, imitating adults, and dreaming of a future on a real stage. Alberta dreamed of dancing under the spotlight, and Red saw himself as a comedian. But their childhoods, like many other black kids of the time, were short-lived. Life separated them sooner than they expected. Red left St. Louis to pursue opportunities in Chicago. Alberta stayed behind, with her mother, her responsibilities, and a dream that had yet to be named. Street dancing, however, was no longer enough. And for a young black girl, professional training was out of reach. Still, she persisted. LaWanda practiced at house parties and community events, determined to make a name for herself. She was tall, graceful, and confident, and began to attract attention, especially from a man named John Peel. He was not particularly handsome, but he was older, well-dressed, and promising. LaWanda Page, then a teenager, married him in 1934. But married life was not what she had expected. They could not even afford their own home and eventually had to move in with LaWanda's mother. Then she gave birth to her first daughter, Clara Estella Peel, her only child, and the biggest reason Alberta kept going. When John Peel died, she, who had just started performing professionally, had to juggle motherhood and being the sole breadwinner in a world that was not easy for women to live on their passions. Then she married a second time. That man accompanied her for a few years, then left suddenly, without promise. The third came after many events, when she had given up hope of a normal family. But that man, although he loved her sincerely, did not stay long. He died, leaving her with a faith that had been broken many times. Wearing a mourning scarf 3 times, burying her husband 3 times, returning to the stage 3 times without anyone waiting behind the scenes. But LaWanda did not break down. She still performed, still swallowed the fire, still returned home every night to hug her child to sleep. Even though her heart was broken, Clara's eyes always reminded her that she was not allowed to stop. People used to say, she lived 3 lives, and each time rose from her own ashes. In the years of raising her children alone after her husband died, Alberta, now LaWanda Page, wasn't looking for fame, she was looking for a way out of poverty. LaWanda returned to dancing. At just 15, she entered the world of nightclub entertainment. She knew how to attract attention, but the competition was fierce. The other dancers were seasoned professionals, dominating the stage. LaWanda knew she had to bring something different, so she stepped back, watched, and learned. By the time LaWanda Page turned 18, she had transformed into a full-fledged performer. With perfectly styled hair, flawless makeup, and curves that could stop cars. At the time, she performed under the name the Bronze Goddess. In a sparkling bikini, with gelled hair, and a fearless gaze, she took to the stage like a goddess emerging from the shadows. An assistant brought out a small bowl of oil, and LaWanda Page gently dipped her fingers into it. Then, each finger lit up in the night. She spun, swaying her hips to the music, her fiery hands drawing arcs in the air, mesmerizing the audience. One time, a guest held up an unlit cigarette, and LaWanda Page stepped forward, chuckled, and lit it with her burning finger. The room held its breath, then exploded in applause. But she didn't stop there. She learned to swallow fire, walk on fire, and added a live python to her act, slithering across her body in the spotlight. Until one night, the python suddenly strangled her before the end of the performance. LaWanda began stomping, spinning, writhing, looking as if a firecracker had gone off inside her. Luckily, 2 stagehands stepped in and removed the python from LaWanda Page's neck. Shaking and angry, LaWanda was undeterred. She stormed backstage, grabbed the snake by the head, dragged it outside, and in a fit of rage, chopped it off. Without the snake, her act lost its charm. LaWanda Page put down the flame and took the microphone. And this time, she burned with words. On the stand-up stage, she told her life story honestly, sarcastically, without embellishment or apology. She talked about men, poverty, sex, and pain with a directness that no one else dared to bring to the stage at the time. The audience was stunned at first, but then they laughed. Because she wasn't trying to please. She was just telling the truth. Her laughter brought her to the comedy duo Skillet and Leroy, 2 men who were famous in the black comedy world. They invited her to join their act, and for more than 15 years, LaWanda Page was the third spirit on stage, carrying her own irreplaceable personality. They toured the country, recorded comedy albums for adults, and she was beloved everywhere, though no one could define her by a specific title. One night, at a small club in Los Angeles, a white producer named Aaron Russo happened to be watching the show. He couldn't stop laughing when he saw LaWanda Page take the stage. He had only one thought in his head: this woman had to appear in the sitcom he was producing, Sanford and Son. He recounted the performance to the crew with excitement, until Red Fox, the show's star, interrupted him and said, "I know her. We grew up together. Just a phone call. An audition." And after decades of living under fire, LaWanda Page stepped into Hollywood for the first time, not with the desire to be famous, but with her own identity. When LaWanda Page walked onto the set of Sanford and Son, she was no longer a nightclub dancer or a small-time comedian. She was a woman who had lost 3 husbands, who had eaten fire, who had beheaded a python backstage. But Hollywood didn't care about what she had been through. They saw only a new face, too old, too rough, too different from what they knew. In her first audition, LaWanda didn't make an impression. She delivered her lines stiffly, didn't look right at the camera, and spoke as if she were trying to memorize each word rather than live the character. Producer Aaron Russo almost decided to replace her. But Red Fox, a childhood friend, stopped her. "If she goes, I go," he said, emphatically. It was more than protection, it was a promise. Red took her along, coaching her through every detail, the right accents, the right pauses, the right eye contact. But by the end, Russo still felt something was missing. "She did everything right," he said, "but I didn't see her in it." This time, Red told LaWanda more bluntly, "You're trying to play the good old church lady, but this role needs you, the one who burned the stage. Stop acting. Go in there and burn it down." The next day, LaWanda Page appeared different. She strode onto the set with confidence, strode forward, looked straight at Fred Sanford, and roared, "You old heathen." The crew gasped, then burst into laughter. And in that moment, Aunt Esther ceased to be a supporting character and became an icon. The spotlight returned to LaWanda Page. But behind the scenes, the story was different. Rumors were quietly circulating, that she was the morale of the crew, that her stiff wig on set was just a cover, and that off set she was a real playboy. She didn't defend herself. She didn't need to. She knew that, in an industry that had never really welcomed women like her, living it up was often a luxury. In the 1980s, Sanford and Son ended. Movie offers dwindled. Someone tried to give her her own show, but things went quiet, as if Hollywood itself didn't know what to do with her. LaWanda Page still appeared in a few supporting roles, in Different Strokes, for example, but none of them were enough to rekindle the old flame. When Sanford returned for a brief season in 1980, there was hope that she would be given a second chance. But the show was cancelled the following year. And with it, the door closed again. Off-screen, her mother was frail and in need of care. LaWanda Page retreated to a small house in South Los Angeles, not far from where she had first performed. No shuttles, no festivals, just a few elderly neighbors and an old television that was about to break. She returned to stand-up comedy, where she didn't need permission to speak her mind. But by this time, her health was failing. The audience still laughed, but her eyes were no longer as bright as before. Some nights, she performed in a wheelchair. Her last role was a murderous hotel manager in a religious musical. A small part, but full of meaning. A soul that had burned out, now reduced to quiet ashes. Then diabetes came, like a final warning. Her daughter, Clara, began to care for her. No more lights, no more audience, just the two of them in a house devoid of laughter. On September 14, 2002, LaWanda Page died of a heart attack caused by complications from diabetes. She was 81. There was no elaborate funeral. No long line of co-workers. Just a few loved ones, a few scattered memories. And then, 4 years later, Clara died. No one said anything. When the stage lights went out, when the laughter no longer echoed behind the scenes, LaWanda Page did not move to a luxurious mansion in Beverly Hills, nor did she seek out beachside villas like many of her contemporaries. She returned to where she started, a small house in South Los Angeles, not far from the neighborhood where she used to dance on the sidewalk for a few pennies. That house had no electronic gate, no high fence, just a small porch with a few old flower pots and iron bars covering the windows, a scene familiar to families of color in working-class neighborhoods. But the special thing was, she never left. While many people chased after the glitz, she still lived in the community, among the people who knew her real name, Alberta. Inside the house, there was no glass cabinet displaying awards. Instead, there are old photo frames, photos of her and her daughter Clara, backstage photos from shows, a few old posters of Aunt Esther, and gospel records neatly arranged on wooden shelves. Perhaps, that is how she kept the light not with gold and silver but with memories. After her death, the house was not turned into a museum, nor was it put up for sale like the property of a TV star. It became as quiet as the way she lived her last years. No one knows exactly who will inherit it, because her only daughter Clara also passed away just 4 years after her mother, leaving unanswered questions about the fate of the place that was once a warm home, and the last vestige of a legend. LaWanda Page's assets when she died were estimated at only $500,000, a modest figure for an icon of American television culture. At her peak with Sanford and Son, she earned between $5,000 and $7,500 per episode, which is nearly $1 million a year in today's dollars. But without a long-term contract, no post-production royalties, and no lavish advertising contracts like the young people of today, all she left behind was just enough, never too much. Today, the neighborhood where she lived has changed. Some houses have been repainted, others are abandoned. People say that when you walk by, you can feel something quietly lingering, like the laughter that hasn't ended yet, like the eyes of a woman who once set the stage on fire, but eventually left in silence. LaWanda Page was never the chosen one. She had no exclusive contract, no media team behind her, no Hollywood star. But her legacy far exceeds anything money or fame can measure. She was one of the first black women to stand on national television and speak in her own voice, without correction, without apology. As Aunt Esther, she not only brought laughter, but also broke the stereotype of black women on screen. She was tough, fierce, and still loving. A character who didn't need to be saved, because she was the keeper of the family fire. Behind the scenes, LaWanda quietly supported many young artists, especially black women, who wanted to pursue comedy, a field that was traditionally dominated by men. She didn't write books, she didn't go on TV to tell her stories, but her little house was a refuge, a crutch, a place of light for those who needed honest advice. In the late 1980s, she donated to community centers in the Watts area, performed for free at fundraisers, and awarded scholarships to young students. She didn't do it for the accolades, but because she knew that with just the right hand at the right time, a dream could be saved. On the day she died, there was no national memorial. There was no live television coverage. But in every word spoken by the next generation of black artists, from Thea Vidal to Whoopi Goldberg, we could still see the imprint of LaWanda Page, a directness, an uncompromisingness, and a look that silenced the room. When asked in an interview how she wanted to be remembered, LaWanda simply smiled and said, "They will remember me because I didn't try to please them. I lived, and I lived as I was." And perhaps that is her greatest legacy. Not her laughter, but her courage to be herself, even if it meant walking through fire. Maybe you saw Aunt Esther in black and white one evening in your small room, when the whole family gathered around the free-to-air TV. Maybe you laughed at her fierce eyes, her harsh but loving lines. Or maybe today is the first time you heard the name LaWanda Page, the woman who walked through fire, lived 3 lives, and never lost her smile. No matter how long you have known her, one thing is certain: people like LaWanda should not be forgotten. So if she was a part of your memories, or if today's story touched you, share it in the comments. Tell us about the first time you saw her on screen. Or simply something you felt from this journey. Memories, once told, live on. And if you believe that stories like these, forgotten fates that contain a treasure trove of legacies, deserve to be told, subscribe to the channel. Because at Final Legacy, we don't just tell stories of famous people, but stories that are worth remembering forever. The final line: because memories also need a place to stay.